Right, we are back with the next instalment of the report cards for the 22-23 season with the next team, Newcastle United, the Geordies, the Toon Army. So school is in session.
I'll run through mine if you just remind me who they signed at the start of the season. Who was the kind of key?
So we got Isak.
Isak came in later on, didn't he? He came in about Christmas.
Was he?
Yeah, I think he was later. Was he later?
Oh,
I just remember
you might be
no
right.
one got him at auction for us. So
yeah, you
he
might be
was
right,
bought.
actually. So
Yeah.
so was Gordon then halfway through the season.
Yeah.
So really it was only Botman, Pope, Target, who didn't really get much game time. Bruno Guimaraes was actually signed halfway through the season before.
Yeah, he was the year before.
So again, we'll count it as Isak. I guess you can include Gordon, albeit both of those guys had 6 months. Isak, I think, got more game time. Botman and Pope, obviously, were stalwarts in the team.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You've got to give them. I mean, I gave them an A. Right, I think they were great.
What's that, style of play?
Style of play, I'd give them an A as well. They were better to watch than Man United. I think
Time
they should have got third.
Wasters?
I don't know if they're time wasters. I think
Time
they scored a lot more goals. They kept a lot of clean sheets at the start of the season as well.
Oh, there's no doubt the defence, but yeah, they had the least amount of time of the ball being on the pitch of the whole Premier League.
Oh, well, that's just clever from the coach. But yeah, no, I think they should have got third. I think they deserved to get third, and they kind of bottled it a bit and ended up with fourth, but they'll still be delighted with that. I wouldn't have picked Newcastle to make the Champions League spots at the start of the season. It's an A for me. I enjoyed watching them, but I think that's because I quite like Newcastle, and despite that they're now Saudi owned, I still hope they do well. Player of the season for me, it was Trippier. I think the whole team played well. Could have gone to Pope, could have gone to Botman. Trippier just looks like, he's just fantastic, setting up goals, tight at the back, loads of his set pieces are world class, so he was my player of the season. Their highlight, 6-1 Spurs. I mean, that again, just an absolute amazing game. I think they're 4-0 up after 20 minutes or something, so they'll absolutely love that. And that was a killer for Spurs as well, because they were having a bit of momentum. Could they get fourth spot? They were still hoping. Them and Liverpool and Brighton were chasing at the time. That was a huge win to kind of cement and keep that gap. Kind of another highlight was they beat Man United 2-0 as well. They'll be happier with that probably than the 6-1. But
any chance to bring up United there?
Yep. The disaster for me was the 3-0 Villa game in April, because it was a bit of a killer for the momentum when they were trying to basically get third, try and catch Arsenal, and it looked like they might even slip out of the 4 at that point. So that was a real momentum killer, was the 3-0 Villa game. As far as signings, they've been very steady Eddie. They've brought in some really good players, and it looks like they've had more of the same. Like, I think Barnes is a great signing, and they've been really kind of not going for the overspend player, but I do think what they need to take them to the next level is a marquee player. I'm not saying it needs to be an Mbappe or a Neymar and bankrupt the team, or bring in a guy who's way above his station and ruins the culture, but I think if they can get someone who is he's a big player, I think that will take them to the next level. So a marquee player would be what they need next for me. But like I said, not a silly one, not someone at 37 or 35 who's past it and way too much money. But if they go out and get an up-and-comer or someone who's playing well in one of the other big teams, I think that would be a bit of a statement for them and improve them in the transfer windows going forward.
Wouldn't mind hearing about who you might think, if there's an example there, but I'll jump into mine then. Starter player, I gave them a B, namely because I thought they were a bit like United at times. They were a bit pragmatic, but between the time wasting, but then at the end of the season, there was a game against Everton. I remember Isak, again, it is Everton at the end of the day, but
yeah.
Goodison, I think Isak went down the left touchline and just absolutely skinned a player and laid it on for Wilson, and they just looked super slick. And they've scored a lot more goals than United.
I think most people did.
No, you're right, 100%. New signings, certainly a B+. I just think, obviously, Isak and Gordon didn't get a huge amount of time to bed down, while Botman and Pope were vital to what was one of the best defences in the Prem. Best result was certainly that they were 3-0 up against Spurs. I think you mentioned that within 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So to beat Spurs 6-1, that's probably my
one of my highlights
season.
Watching the Spurs guy watch it, go, no, I'm turning off, fam. No, how can we be 2-0 down? And then it's like, if this is good, oh no, and it was one of those amazing things.
It was during a period, I don't know if that was the first game, but there was a series of 3 or 4 games where they were literally like 2 or 3 down within 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember the game against Liverpool where Carlton, they end up coming back and then and then they score. They concede a goal in the last second to Jota. Yeah. Player of the season, I'd say Bruno Guimaraes. When he got injured in the middle of the season, while they weren't losing a lot of games, or when they did lose, they lost 1-0. They just seem to lose the sort of ability to control the game and sort of have dictate the tempo. And he
I
seems
like him
to be
a lot. He's one of my favourite players. I just gave it to Trippier just because I think the defence was fantastic.
Even though he absolutely gave the two fingers to Arsenal when they went in for him.
Yeah, I don't care. He's you've got to move on.
So thoughtful of you. Trophies obviously 0, but overall obviously an A, quite an easy A. Despite
it's an easy A, but the one thing I think most Newcastle fans will be disappointed is they never threatened. The FA Cup's what it's all about, and they never seem to be threatening. Did they get to the final? Did you guys beat them in the final for the Carling Cup?
The Carling Cup,
for the League Cup. But I mean, and even that, the goalie gets sent off the game before, like, you know what I mean? And they kind of chucked away that cup. But I think that everyone wants to see. Well,
their down points, like I say, were like when you consider that their downs, like United got spanked on a number of occasions, and outside of that had a really good defence, where they were pretty consistent all season. Their downs were a lot more sort of reasonable compared to someone like United. So we're actually sort of, while they didn't have probably as many highs, they didn't have certainly as many lows. So they seem like a team that's well settled.
They want to go further in the FA Cup, though. I mean, that's like, okay, if they snag a Carling Cup, that a trophy's a trophy. They haven't won one in 50, 60 years, but I think the fans want to see them at least challenge in that FA Cup as well. So
well, when you get a guy like, obviously we'll get into it in another episode, but when you got someone like Harvey Barnes who will have a lot more productivity, Gordon who should be settled down now, and Isak with 6 months under his belt, they should be pretty good, albeit I haven't got them for top 4 next season. But anyway,
I think we'll get to that later when we're talking about predictions and stuff. I think
so hard to replicate.
You're going to have to be a bold person to pick the top 4, and even smarter if you get it right, because there's probably 6. There's definitely 6, maybe 7, with a possible dark horse 8 and 9. You know what I mean? That could actually get in the top 4.
That's the beauty of the Prem, outside of unfortunately outside of City at the moment. But it's the beauty of the Prem. But right, we're both on board with Newcastle. We're going to lead into a couple of the teams that have had much poor ratings, so we can slag off a couple of the opposition. So that should be a bit more fun.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's go
On to the next one.